Okay, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jasmine. I am the communications intern with Northwoods and Waters. A little bit about us is we seek to unite the people of the St. Croix watershed on behalf of our shared cultural, natural, and historic resources. A little bit more about the watershed. Here's a bit of a map. I won't go into all of those facts there, but it takes up quite a bit of the um, western part of Wisconsin, eastern part of Minnesota here. And as for our goals, they are to create sustainable economic opportunities that connect the region and increase awareness and understanding of our heritage stories and those resources. The United States has 61 national heritage areas, each one telling a significant part of our nation's story and history. So let's put the national in our name. And at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Alyssa. Alyssa was with us for quite some time as our business manager. She is a local graphic designer and historian with a specialty in exhibit creation and experience marketing. In 2023, Auten was hired by MacDonald and Owen to create an exhibit exploring Luck's vast lumber heritage. After a year of research, writing, and design, the exhibit is now on display in a trailside pavilion next to the factory. It explores the history of logging in northern Wisconsin, the story of the Duncan Yo-Yo craze, and the lumber companies that have operated in the original factory. And so, Alyssa, I will let you tell us more.
Sounds good. All right, let's see here. I'm going to replace the current share and share my screen. Give me a minute to get that set up. I think I've got the right thing. Let's see here. You can't see anything yet, can you?
Nope.
Okay, hang on. You did it wrong. Let's see. Present. Working. Oh, I have to do share my screen. That's why. Duh. All right, give me just a minute. How's that?
Not yet. Not seeing it.
No? What the heck? All right, let me click share. Hang on. How about now?
There we go.
Okay. Like, seems so easy when no one's watching you. And then when you get on the screen and everybody's watching you, we can't figure it out. So, all right. Thank you, Jasmine, for the introduction. It's nice to be back with live. I haven't been on one of these for a while. And yep, I did work for the Heritage area for 7 years and was a volunteer for a couple of years before that. So know the Heritage area well and excited to be here talking about yo-yos. I don't know if you saw in my quote in the introduction paragraph for this. It's like, I never knew I would know so much about yo-yos, and it's a really fascinating story. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about it. So a little bit of background on how we got to this project. So as we all know, Northwest Wisconsin has had a really long history of the lumber industry, 1700s fur trade in the Northwoods up to massive logging practices in the 19th century, and then to sawmills and lumber production at the turn of the 20th century. So the high quality hardwoods in this region brought Duncan Yo-Yo Company to Luck, and Donald Duncan's marketing tactics really made Luck, Wisconsin, the yo-yo capital of the world. Today, MacDonald Owen Lumber Company, as Jasmine mentioned, they operate out of the original Duncan factory in Luck, and that factory is located along the Gandy Dancer Regional Trail, which used to be the railroad that brought lumber to the factory. So about a year and a half ago, MacDonald and Owen staff and board decided that they really wanted to highlight the history of the lumber industry and yo-yo production in Luck in the area surrounding it. And they decided they were going to see about doing an exhibit along the trail and then a large mural on the side of the factory. So they reached out to me to handle the exhibit section of this project, and that would be featured in the picnic pavilion next to the Gandy Dancer Trailhead. And that is where this whole project started. So Jasmine gave an introduction, and pretty much everything I was going to say is what she said. So I won't go over that again, but I grew up in the area, and I really, really love the River Valley's history and its recreation and beauty. And projects like this bring together my love for design and history, and I really love putting together exhibits that help others learn about the unique history that we have here. So this was a really fun one, and I was not expecting to learn so much and be so kind of blown away by this yo-yo story that I have our family has a cabin in Luck since I was 2, and I don't know that I knew that we were, that was the yo-yo capital. So a really quick overview of our sort of agenda for the evening. So I'll talk really quickly about logging, the history of logging, and the history of the yo-yo itself to give us a foundation of where all this started. Then we're going to talk about Donald F. Duncan, the Donald Duncan Company, and that marketing ingenuity that he had. We'll do a little bit inside the factory. I'll show you some photos from what the factory was like during its heyday, and then those really sort of halcyon years from 1961 to 64, where they were just really booming. And then there's a little bit of the beginning of the end of that sort of Duncan craze, and then what happened post Duncan, a bit about today's lumber history, lumber industry, mostly about MacDonald and Owen, since they are sort of the big ones in Luck at the time, or at this time. And then I'll talk a little bit about putting together the exhibit, and so show you some photos so you know what you'll be seeing next time you visit. And then we'll do a Q&A if anyone has anything. And I heard that someone might be sharing some yo-yo skills, but I'm not sure if that person's here, so we'll see. I will not be sharing any yo-yo skills because I have none. So, all right, let's get into it. So, the historic lumber industry in northern Wisconsin. So in the 1830s, entrepreneurs were looking to make their fortunes in the lumber trade after the decline of the booming fur trade of the late 1700s. Northern Wisconsin is rich in white pine and other hardwoods, and was situated conveniently near rivers and tributaries that could efficiently transport them to the mills and then to the market, or to market. The steady growth of this region's logging business during the 1840s and 50s led to larger crews, like you see on the pictures there, larger output, larger expenses, and a rising demand for lumber in the years after the Civil War took logging camps to pretty much every tributary of the St. Croix and the nearby forests. Now, the industry didn't result much in permanent settlement until the 1880s, when the expansion of the railroad system in northern Wisconsin led to the creation of numerous sawmills and the towns that supported them, like what happened in Luck. Super quick, like itty bitty little bit of history background of the logging industry. There's a ton. And now here's an itty bitty little background about the yo-yo. The yo-yo is believed to have originated in one of 3 countries: China, the Philippines, and or Greece. Apparently mention of the object can be dated back to 440 BC. The first Philippine yo-yo, which apparently can mean to return or come, was used as a weapon. So it was made of a set of stones and a long vine or animal sinew, and then the hunter would aggressively lower the stones onto his prey. And if the first blow wasn't fatal, you would reel it in and try again. So then over time, the yo-yo evolved into a toy and gained incredible popularity during the last century. In the 1920s, the yo-yo was brought to the US by Filipinos who observed that it had become really the national sport in their country, and they thought it might also catch on here. and they were right. So then the person behind the yo-yo craze was a businessman named Donald F. Duncan. In the 1930s, he started manufacturing yo-yos in Chicago. So he hired Filipino demonstrators that he had met to create a buzz about the toy that was becoming really popular in the United States. He saw, sort of foretold or foresaw how big they were going to be. And so in 1932, he trademarked the yo-yo name. His daughter Anne recalled about at the start, Dad used to drive around Chicago looking for maple trees. Then he began placing ads in northwestern Wisconsin newspapers seeking maple from landowners there. The response was so good, we moved there in 1946. So in 1946, the Duncan family and Donald F. Duncan Company moved from Chicago to Luck because of the proximity to excellent maple and white birch hardwoods in the area. So the business set up shop right in Luck along the railroad tracks that ran through town, which allowed easy delivery of the wood that was needed to manufacture their yo-yos. In the early years, a crew of 36 men supplied roughly 40,000 board feet of maple every week. So a couple pictures. So here on the top left is an aerial view of the Duncan Yo-Yo plant in downtown Luck. And you can notice that the factory was built right along the railroad lines. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. Little thing to pop up. So these are the railroad lines, and this is the factory. Is my mouse showing up for you? The little circle? I think it is. Hopefully it is. Then in the bottom picture from 1953, you'll see a float that for the Polk County Fair by the Duncan Yo-Yo Company. And then by 1956, Duncan Yo-Yos had employed 94 people. That year, 1 million board feet of Wisconsin hard maple was used to produce 8 million yo-yos. So the incredible popularity of the yo-yo did not happen by accident. Donald Duncan's sort of legendary and innovative marketing strategy, he invented in the 1930s when he started the Yo-Yo Company. So he hired those young Filipinos that I mentioned who he had met, who were expert demonstrators, to travel around the country and create a buzz about yo-yos in schools, stores, small towns, anywhere. So his marketing plan, involved more than just the demonstrations, contests, things like that. It included careful placement of yo-yos in town prior to the events, and then the buzz made them fly off the shelves. So eventually the tagline, "If it isn't Duncan, it isn't yo-yo," was known around the country and beyond. Oh, the yo-yo demonstration was a huge part of his success and the company's success. So some years after the Duncan Company moved its operations to Luck, Ted and Grace Anderson and Jerry Vidine, who were all local Luck folks, were hired as demonstrators. And they spent 4 years in the 1950s touring the US, Cuba, and Puerto Rico, performing yo-yo tricks and drumming up interest with those contests, prizes, sales, and the demonstrations. I think that picture on the bottom left is so neat, seeing people from the company down in Cuba in 1950. It's just, we found that in the Smithsonian collection. It's just really neat. And then in 2010, the Intercounty Leader published an article written by Greg Marston, who a lot of local people here know, and it said, Anderson recalls spending over 6 months touring Puerto Rico with his new wife, they called it their extended honeymoon, and a crew exploring the tiny villages and even some of the tiny islands off the US territory, keeping the yo-yo craze fueled and growing in places that had never seen such a toy, let alone a professional who played with the toys for a living. So because of Duncan's marketing tactics, the factory became a bustling place that had shifts around the clock. It was so busy. Between 1956 and 1965, the number of Duncan employees went from 94 to 618. Crazy, a testament to the toy's quick rise in popularity. So MacDonald and Owen have a large amount of archival photos from the Duncan Yo-Yo heyday. And I mentioned there's a pretty comprehensive collection at the Smithsonian. So I wanted to show you a couple things here. So this first photo shows an employee watching over an endless stream of yo-yos passing from the turning lathes to the paint vats. I found the fact, or they said that the largest single order of Duncan Yo-Yos was 1,900,000 in 1959. 2 million yo-yos in one order. The middle top photo shows an employee stringing yo-yos. In 1960, they used 4,000 miles of cord. And then below that is a picture of a group of employees around a huge pile of yo-yos on a table. So that color photo in the top right appeared in the Milwaukee Picture Journal on September 16th, 1956. And the caption read, 10-year-old yo-yo champion Pinky Ridgway is shown with some of the factory products in Luck, where more toys are produced than any other place in the world. And then this quote at the bottom is from a 1960 article from a journalist who visited the factory. That says, in room after room of the cement block plant, I saw dried wood coming from the kiln, being cut, shaped, turned by speedy lathes into yo-yo shape, tumbled into barrels and paint, or for some of the more expensive ones, moving along like lollipops on a conveyor belt to be gunned blue, then striped white. So what they called the halcyon years, 1961 to 1964. In 1961, the factory employed 165 people and produced 80,000 yo-yos daily, up to 20 million a year, and reportedly consumed over 1 million board feet of lumber annually. At that time, Duncan made 5 basic models of yo-yos, ranging in price from 25 cents to $1. They were made out of plastic and wood, and some even had rhinestone decorations, apparently. So 1961 was the big year, thanks to the tours and print and TV advertising. Duncan Yo-Yo sales grew so fast that the plant kept expanding and hiring, and it became a giant of Polk County, Wisconsin industry. At this point, the entire town of Luck was built around yo-yo production, from the rail lines to the infrastructure and maplewood supplies that fed several dozen giant lathes. Then from 1962 to 63, the Donald Duncan Company sold 45 million yo-yos in a country that had 40 million kids, and they could not keep up with the demand. By 1964, the factory was a huge multi-building operation that employed over 600 people, which was roughly half the town's population. And then they had a few employee reunions, apparently, and one of them, someone said, the school was full of them. It was dangerous walking down the hallway because yo-yos were flying in all directions. Unfortunately, the beginning of the end, oops, I have a spelling error, nobody look. Unfortunately, the beginning of the end of the Duncan Yo-Yo era came in 1965. The downfall was a result of many factors, a main one including difficulty keeping up with the toy's high demand. So that year, in 1965, a federal court ruled that the term yo-yo had become a generic name for a common toy. And the cost of that court fight led to the Duncan Company going out of business, since he had originally had the trademark on it. So during the same year, creditors put enough pressure on the Duncan Company to force them into involuntary bankruptcy and the sudden closure of the Luck operations. This left dozens of suppliers hanging because Duncan had just secured an order of 7 million yo-yos, which was supposedly enough to get them out of bankruptcy. So Duncan asked the creditors if they would allow a Chapter 11 reorganization plan, but they refused. So in 1966, the Donald Duncan Company is officially out of business after 20 years of operation in Luck. I have another spelling error. Nobody look at this screen. This is terrible. My mother would be so disappointed. Okay, we're moving on. So after Duncan Company officially closed, there was a liquidation auction, and the main building, the factory, was eventually sold to the Luck Manufacturing Company, which was a bedding and mattress company out of St. Paul. They operated out of the factory for many years and even produced yo-yos for a time under the moniker Medalist. Flambeau Products Corporation in Baraboo, Wisconsin, was the new manufacturer of Duncan Yo-Yos, producing 1,000 toys every day. The image on the right is an article from 1975 in the St. Paul Pioneer Press talking about the company there. And so various lumber businesses have occupied the original Duncan factory space, all while honoring Luck's yo-yo and lumber legacy. So then we move on to the current business that's operating out of the factory today. So the people who put together this whole exhibit and mural project. So in 1970, MacDonald and Owen Veneer and Lumber Company was incorporated by Archie MacDonald. He was a sales director at Webster Industries in Bangor, Wisconsin, the largest hardwood company in Wisconsin at the time. And I read that he was frustrated with the antiquated ways of the Webster Industries and decided to pioneer a different path on his own. So from 1970 to 1980, the business operated out of his house and partnered with local businesses to outsource all services. Bill Owen, the other namesake, worked as the veneer broker, but only stayed with the company a few years. And then Archie purchased Bill's share of the business, but to honor him in the part he played in founding the company, he kept the Owen name in the company's name. So in 1981, a man named Gordon Fick started St. Croix Valley Hardwoods, which was a dry kiln operation, and they took over the Duncan Yo-Yo factory space. Back at MacDonald and Owen, a salesman named David Dwight was hired in 1980, and then in 1997, he bought half of MacDonald and Owen from Archie. You can see that article on the right there. So as a sort of point for how big the company was, in 1998, MacDonald and Owen had 6 employees. In 2003, Dwight assumed full ownership of the company, and by 2007, they employed 42 people and had acquired 3 facilities around the country. In that same year, MacDonald and Owen was recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing privately owned companies in the US due to its amazing sales between the years of 2003 and 2006. Then in 2015, MacDonald and Owen acquired the St. Croix Valley Hardwoods facility, which is where the building that was constructed for Duncan Yo-Yos. At that point, they had 92 employees. And then by 2017, MacDonald and Owen was exporting to 25 countries and did just shy of 80 billion in sales, all based here out of the factory in Luck. I mean, they had other factories, but the business is based here. And then in 2020, MacDonald and Owen celebrated its 50th anniversary. And you can see this little building here. I think you're seeing that where that arrow is. That's the original Duncan factory, and then how much it's expanded out from there over the years. So today, they still use the original Duncan kiln, which is shown here for drying lumber. They've made several modifications to increase efficiency, but the capacity of the kiln is about 32,000 board feet of lumber. And on average, they dry between 850,000 and 1 million board feet of lumber each month. So the legacy of lumber in Luck, Wisconsin is quite remarkable and also quite unknown. But the story is becoming more popular and more known because of this exhibit and some of the work that they're doing to promote it. And so thanks to MacDonald Owen's dedication to honor the history of the factory and the hardwood industry. So let's talk about the exhibit a little bit. So you can see, I can talk a little bit about how it was developed and what's there now. So the process of creating an exhibit has a lot of stages. I think this is the 11th. I tried to count. I think I got them all the 11th exhibit I've created. So there's a lot that goes into it to organize all the information. So first is a site visit, see the factory and the pavilion space, meet with the contact there whose name was Erica. I took a lot of pictures, a lot of measurements, got a feel for the space, and we talked about what they wanted included, what it was going to be like. So you'll see here, this is the pavilion. The trail is right along here. I'll show you another picture in a minute. So the trail's here and the trailhead is sort of here-ish. So this was an Eagle Scout project and it's a trailside just rest pavilion. So the exhibit was going to go in there, or was going to go in there. And then this window here is on now the inside of the factory, but it was the outside, and you can see in this picture of the float back in the 1950s that those windows are the same as these. And they had some extra big windows, and so we decided that we were going to incorporate one of the windows into the exhibit, and I'll show you how we did that, because it was one of the artifacts that was left from the Duncan Yo-Yo days. Then I gathered a lot of content, including photos, newspaper articles, and artifacts. You can see an example of some of those things that were found down there. Went to the Luck Museum. They have an exhibit about yo-yos. I received items and information from MacDonald and Owen, did some research online, and even luckily received permission from the Smithsonian to use some of their images, because there's some really, as you've seen, some really great pictures. And then I went through all of it and organized all of it into themes. And then that led me to plan out the flow of the exhibit and how it would be presented. So then up next was designing all the panels and creating mock-ups for MacDonald and Owen to review. So this top picture here was a picture I took at the first site visit. So it was before they finished off the interior and painted it. And then these are just my photoshopped mock-ups of the panels and the window and what it would look like. And here it is installed. And then this bottom thing down here is a big mock-up that I used to put together to pick colors, the theme, the different things that are going to go on different panels, all of that. And then this bottom part is the proposed layout from sort of clockwise that would go around the pavilion. So one neat artifact that MacDonald and Owen had from the original factory was an 11-foot ruler. This huge 11-foot super random ruler. You can see it right there. Put a little arrow. And they didn't know what it was for. Nobody knew. We didn't find any information about it. A couple people suggested maybe they would measure some of the cord or the string for a certain amount of yo-yos. We don't know. But we incorporated that into the exhibit under the timeline with a question on the panel that told the viewer what it was. And then we say, what do you think it might be for? Which I just think is kind of fun, because it's a way for people to engage and be a little curious about what that might have been. And then printing and installation. So these bottom photos are from installation day, which is a very exciting and nerve-wracking day because you spend a lot of time on something and hope you find no spelling errors like I just did in my slides. So here are the metal panels that we had ordered. And then this big window, that thing is heavy. It is iron. We found some neat photographs, which you've seen a few in this presentation, and then I like what is it, Mod Podge or whatever that thing where you kind of clear coat it onto there. So that's how we did the photos on there. And then there's the panels and there's the window hanging up. And so the exhibit goes through a lot of basically what I talked to you about this evening, but a bit more, obviously a bit more information. So it's an intro panel with a bit of history. That's the logging history, the yo-yo history. And then this little panel right here are these 3 sort of popular yo-yo tricks and how to do them. And then there's a timeline that you just saw that goes across the whole west wall from 1830s all the way up to today, what we talked about with a few other things. And then the window with some more photos. And then the last thing we wanted to incorporate was a more to explore in luck panel, because a lot of people coming through on the Gandy Dancer they're just right there on the trail. They don't necessarily go off the trail. And so we wanted to make sure they knew that there was Straight Lake State Park, there's the Luck Museum and Library, the Natural Food Co-op, all of that. So we made sure to put something on there promoting some of the other things in the area, as well as acknowledgments for the exhibit and credit for where the information came from. So then there she is, the last thing, the last put together exhibit in the pavilion. So the sign here is the yo, did you know where you are? And sort of an invite for people at the trailhead to come in and explore. And then there's the trail right there. And then here's the exhibit all under the pavilion. And it's very proud of how this exhibit came together, and honored that MacDonald, and proud that MacDonald and Owen thought to share this history with the public, because I think it's pretty unknown for the most part. And also they're doing a mural by a local artist named Jessica Turtle. She already did 1/2 of the mural this year and then is finishing the second half of the building. It's this huge long wall on the south side of the factory. And so the second half is going to be completed this spring, and it has a lot of nods to the yo-yo history in sort of a subtle way, which is neat. So with that, the last thing I wanted to show, because there's a couple things on the timeline that didn't really fit into the presentation, but in 1990, Yo-Yo Barbie was released, and apparently they decided to name June 6th as National Yo-Yo Day in 1990. So still a buzz back all the way up through the 90s, and I guess today maybe. So that's it. And I don't know if there are any questions or people have tricks they want to show, etc. So
Well, thank you, Alyssa. That was
you're welcome.
awesome. I'm sure I will have 100 questions the more I think about it. But yeah, that was fascinating. Did
Yeah,
you,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, if June 6th is National Yo-Yo Day, did you launch the exhibit on June 6th?
No, we didn't end up being able to. I'm trying to think when we did it. When did we? Sometime this summer. I mean, it was weird because by the time all of the information had been done and designed and vetted, we had all the panels printed, and then it was fall, dead of winter last year, or this last winter, and they needed to cut all the wood to finish the walls and do the painting and all that. So then we ended up having to wait until the spring of this year. So it's been up, I should know that because of this, but I don't remember how many months, but it's it's been up since the spring, I think. So hopefully people have had a chance to see it, and or it's a good reason to go up there and stop at Cafe Ren and explore luck a little bit.
Alyssa?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is Lisa Dora, but I'm on my husband's machine.
Hi.
Thank you for doing that presentation. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the trees? Do you know? Did you ever talk about like where the trees came from? Like it'd just be cool to see like a map of the trees. Or I know Straight Lake State Park was a big hardwood.
Like the trees to make the yo-yos?
Yeah, like
Oh,
whatever the billions of board feet of maple, where were those coming from?
the only one that I know, and I mean, there may be records, there's probably records of it, but the only one that I saw was that picture that I showed. I don't know if you saw it in the beginning, from the Smithsonian collection that was in Cable,
Oh,
Wisconsin. Did people see that? I can go back to it if anyone wants me to, but that was a neat one because it said where, I mean, I'm sure it's not the only place, obviously, but it said where the yo-yos are from or something like that, from Cable. But I don't know beyond that.
yeah, because I thought there might have been records of the companies they worked with and where,
Probably.
like a lot of guys logged their farms, or where the actual lumber came from.
Yeah, that would be another neat aspect to it.
Thanks.
hmm
I have another one for you, Alyssa. How did you get into curating exhibits?
Let's see here. So my education is in architecture, and a lot of architecture is designing presentation boards and panels of your design for the building. And so I learned a lot of graphic design skills and layout skills in that way. And then, geez, how did it happen after that? So that's where I really enjoy that, the design layout part of putting together exhibits, as well as the figuring out how to make the experience for someone and how do you take them through a story, which I think is just something I enjoy doing. It's just something I like, and I think I understand relatively well. And then my first exhibit that I ever did, or first interpretive panel, I got a call from John Olinger over at the city of Lindstrom, and they were looking to bring the Muni Bar, if anyone knows where that is on Highway 8, back to more of its original brick facade, because it had been covered with this 70s, 60s, 70s angle of shakes, like wood, like shake roof tile or roof shakes, however I'm trying to say that. So that started with sort of a design of the building to bring the brick back, because my background is also in historic building conservation. And so I think I don't know where he got my name. It might have been my mother, which is kind of silly, but she worked over that way. Anyway, and then he also said we want to do an interpretive panel on the corner of the building talking about the history and showing the photos. And that was my first exhibit that I did, and it's still there today. It's very faded from like 2010 or 11, I think, is when I did that one. And then I've worked for a few museums and historic sites since then, where we put together a specific exhibit and need the panels, and then have done some work at Almansrot Park in Lindstrom. I did the panels on the historic house that they have there, Carl Oscar House, the 75th anniversary for the Polk Burnett Electric Cooperative. I was hired to do that. I don't know. It's not what I went to school for, but I really love it. So it's been fun to learn about all sorts of different topics, and in different times of when people ask me to work on them. So it's been fun.
Sounds fun. I hope
Mhm.
the next one you're asked, you'll come back and tell us all about that one too.
Sure. You bet. Well, now I feel like I should have done some tricks, but I don't have any. I can't yo-yo. But you could probably YouTube some pretty awesome yo-yo tricks if you feel the need to see them.
Yeah. Well, if that wraps up the questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up here.
Cool. Thank you. Fun to be on. Glad Live is back and fun to be on this end on it and not on the back on the presentation side and not on the back end. Although more nerve-wracking, I will say.
For sure. Well, thank you so much again for coming and sharing with us. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. I hope you will be able to join us next month, which would be December 10th, where we will get to listen to Marcia Bjornrud talk about the geology of the watershed and hear from her book, Turning to Stone, Discovering the Subtle Wisdom of Rocks.